Hey, how's it going? Alex here from IdeaSpot. Today we are setting up an optimized install of WordPress on a cloud VPS, and we're using an excellent free tool called WordOps to do this. We've used this method to set up a basic WordPress site, and we're getting some really nice results in Google PageSpeed Insights, so we'll go through that later in the tutorial. Now, the cloud VPS I was using for this tutorial is Linode, but you can feel free to use Vultr or DigitalOcean. I've got links to free trials for all of those in the description, so you can try this tutorial for free. Now, the reason I wanted to try WordOps was because it's free and it has an automated setup with server caching, and there's no limit on the number of sites you can install. So very scalable method, as well as being a free method. And it automatically comes with industry standard security, and it provides automatic security updates. So if you're getting started with VPS servers, this takes a lot of the hassle out of managing a VPS. Now, this method does use the terminal to enter the commands onto the server, but don't worry if you've never done this before. There's only about 5 commands, and I've put all the commands on my blog, so check the description. All the commands I've used during this tutorial are given over on the blog, so it's going to be super easy to do this. Now, to do this tutorial, you will need a VPS. Now, you can get a free trial from these most popular VPS providers, Vultr, Linode, or DigitalOcean. These are the most popular and fastest ones on the market at the moment. So links in the description. You can get free trials for all of these for 30 to 60 days. I think Vultr gives you 30 days. The other two give you 60. Just briefly, I'll touch on the products that are available. So with Vultr, the best one is this $6 one where you get an Intel Xeon 3.8 gigahertz NVMe drives for $6. Now, the second best one is probably Linode's AMD EPYC. That's 2.9 gigahertz SSD drive, and it's only $5. I think this is the best $5 option. And for $6, you get this 3.8 gig processor, which is a significantly better processor. So if you've got the budget for $6, then just go for this one. But if you want to try out a good $5 one, I think Linode is good as well. DigitalOcean is pretty popular as well. So you get a Xeon Gold 2.3, which is actually better than the $5 Vultr one. So that's probably the third option. But they do have lots of other server features over at DigitalOcean, which is great for developers and app development, those kind of things. So DigitalOcean can suit some projects as well. But like I said, free trials in the description, so check those out. Today, we're going to be using Linode, and I'm going to explain why in a second. So normally when I've been setting up VPSs for WordPress, I've been using Vultr and Plesk. And Plesk, when you use Vultr, actually has WebAdmin SE for Plesk, and that is free, and it gives you 3 free domains. So this is all graphically based, point and click, super easy to set up. I've got a tutorial that I've done already. I'll put that in the description, but this is super easy to set up. Same with DigitalOcean. They have the Plesk WebAdmin SE. Linode only has the regular Plesk where you need a paid license to use it for more than the free trial period. So it's not as good as the other two options because you don't get that free WebAdmin SE version of Plesk, which is really great value because it doesn't cost anything, obviously. But Linode, if you just run from the command line, I found this option called WordOps. Now, WordOps is a really cool little piece of software. So WordOps actually does all the things we need and does it for free. So it's got fast caching optimized specifically for WordPress on a WordOps, and it's secure. It gives us automatically security updates. So all our security patches are done automatically. You don't have to worry about your server getting breached because it's out of date. That's done automatically. You've got a pre-configured firewall and DDoS protection. All these things are straight out of the box with WordOps, and it's free. No limit on the number of sites. So with Plesk, there was that 3 domain limit. This is completely free and there's no limit. So you can actually run even more WordPress websites using this method. But it is a little bit more tricky because you're running it from a command line. It's not as point and click as Plesk, so it's not as friendly. But for Linode, I think this is a good choice. So let's get started. So like I said, just follow the link in the description. It will take you here, enter an email and start creating an account. After your account is all set up, we're going to start building our server. So let's move on to that. First thing we'll do here is we're going to create a Linode. So click there, and now we set up our Linode. Now we choose our operating system. I'm going to choose Ubuntu 20 LTS. That is long-term support Ubuntu. That's the most recent version of Ubuntu that's supported by WordOps. So I'm going to go with that one for this tutorial. And then we choose our region. So we just choose something that's closest to your audience. I'm just going to go with North America there. This will run fine on a 1 gigabyte, but you can use any size. But for this tutorial, we'll just use the cheapest one. And now we set up our root password. So choose a nice, long, complex root password. That's really important. I'm going to paste mine in there. Now, optionally, you can use an SSH key. You don't have to do this. I'm going to pop mine in there because I've already set up an SSH key, but a root password is all you need. You don't need an SSH key, but I will link to a tutorial if you want an SSH key as well. Then we can just click create and get our Linode ready. Now that'll take a minute or two to set up. It'll move from provisioning to booting to running. So just be patient while that sets up. Now we do have our server running, so we can actually start setting up our domain and pointing the domain over to this server. So let's go to domains and we're going to add a domain. So for this tutorial, I've set one up called newidea.site, and my ideaspot.class Gmail address is my email. And from here, we insert a default record from one of our Linodes. So let's select the Linode that we just set up and create the domain. So as soon as this is set up, we will see our name server records here. Now, these are where we need to point our domain over to Linode to get our domain working. So it doesn't matter where you've hosted your domain. I've hosted this one on GoDaddy, but Namecheap, Google, wherever. We're just going to copy those out and move them over to the domain register. So over on GoDaddy, in this case, under DNS management, I'm going to enter my own domain servers. If your domain is hosted somewhere else, I've got a good tutorial here that covers most of the common providers. I'll put that link in the description. Also, Cloudflare has a really great resource which covers pretty much all of the ones you could ever think of down here. They've got links to Bluehost, HostGator, wherever. So I'll pop that link in the description. But really, no matter where you are hosted, it's all pretty similar. All we have to do is basically enter those name servers in the DNS manager. So NS1, NS2, NS3, etc. In this case, there's only 2 boxes. So I'm going to add extra lines here to add the name servers 3, 4, and 5. But that's all done now. So that looks all good to go. I can go ahead and save this one. And after clicking save, I'll get a confirmation box here. I'm going to click that yes and continue. And wait for a second. And after that, it gives us a notice that it does take some time for this all to process the updates. So just be patient while the DNS updates. It does take a fair while. I'm going to refresh that just to make sure it's all saved in there. So there we go. We've got our Linode name servers listed there. So let's go back to Linode. So these are all matched up to our Linode name servers. All right, for our next step, let's connect to our Linode. So I'm going to go back to Linodes and the IP address, we're going to copy that. They've actually got a clipboard there. We can click that to copy the IP address into our clipboard. Now, if you're using Windows like me, you'll want some SSH software like PuTTY, which is a free one. MobaXterm is another good free one. Either way is cool. For Mac, you can just use Terminal. Either way. I'll put links to both of those in the description, but I'm using PuTTY for this tutorial. So just download it, run it, install it. Then you can grab your IP address. PuTTY looks like this. You just paste the server IP in there. That's the IP there. Just paste it in. I'm going to save this as Linode tutorial and go ahead and save that in. And then we can go ahead and load that one up and open it. You'll get a confirmation box the first time you try to connect. So just click yes, and then you'll get a terminal that looks like this where we can log in as root, and we'll need our root password. We can just paste that in with right click for PuTTY, and that'll paste in our password, and then we log in to our terminal. So now we can go ahead and start installing WordOps. So they have documentation here. I'm going to show this complete process during the tutorial, but it's really just 5 commands. I've got the 5 commands listed here. So this is the first one. I'm just going to copy that. This installs WordOps onto our terminal. So I'm just going to paste that command in here. So I've pasted that in, hit enter, and we're going to let that run. So this does take a few minutes, so just be very patient while this installs. After a couple of minutes, you'll start to see some progress as WordOps starts to install there. And here it's going to prompt you for a username. So I'm just going to use Ideaspot for this tutorial, and it's going to ask for an email as well. So I'm going to use ideaspotclass@gmail.com. And then we hit enter, and this step should finish up just fine. So here we go. Next step is to set up Bash auto-completion. This makes the terminal a lot easier to use because you just press tab to auto-complete any commands as you type them in. This is optional, but it's recommended. So the other way to do it is just use this command here, but I'm going to use the one from the documentation. So just enter that one in there. And now for our next step, we're going to install the WordOps stack. So we're going to grab that stack install command there, copy that, and we're going to paste that into the terminal and press enter. And we're going to let that run. Now, this step is probably the longest one during the process. So this installs quite a few different pieces of software onto your server. So here we'll see all the good things that help a web server work. So you've got the MySQL, Nginx, and we'll get PHP in a second here as well. There we go. But just be patient while all this stuff installs. So I'm going to skip ahead 5 minutes. So this is all finished up. It's going to give us a WordOps username and password. We can use these to connect to the web panel later. It's just a basic web monitor. It gives us a few other things as well, but I'm going to copy those credentials and keep them safe for later. All right, for our next step, we want to check that our domain has finished propagating over to our Linode IP address. So you can go over to whatsmydns.net, put your domain name in there and click search, and it should be hitting your Linode IP. Now, this can take a while for this to actually work. It can take a few hours usually. So if it's not hitting your IP, just be patient and come back when it is finished. There's your IP there. Just check that that matches what you were seeing on whatsmydns.net. So let's copy our next command here. This is going to set the website up at newidea.site. So just change that to match your website. WordPress fast CGI caching, PHP 7.4, and let's encrypt SSL. So WordPress fast CGI caching is what we're using here. This is probably the simplest one to do. There's actually other options. WordOps under their FAQ gives you fast CGI caching, Redis caching, WP super caching using that plugin, Rocket plugin, or Cache Enabler plugin. So you can optimize it for any of these setups. This is the simplest one. It doesn't need any plugins to work, and it gives you very good performance out of the box. So for this tutorial, I'm going to use that fast CGI caching, and I'm going to paste that command in there and hit enter. Now again, this does take a few minutes, so just be patient here. It's going to install WordPress and install an SSL certificate. So I'm going to skip the video ahead a couple minutes to where this wraps up. All right, now it's issuing the SSL certificate, so this should go okay. Just make sure that domain has been propagated like we talked about earlier. If you run into an error here, it's probably because your domain isn't ready yet. So just come back after an hour or two. Don't spam this and keep retrying it because you only get 5 chances per day, I think, with these free SSL certificates. But this is okay. I've got my WordPress admin and password credentials here. So we're going to copy those out and we're going to save those in our notepad. But this is all successful. We've got our website there at newidea.site. I'm going to pop these credentials into our notepad and we're going to use those later. Now, I recommend keeping these somewhere safe, like an encrypted drive or a password manager, but we can head over to our website now. Should be working just fine. Here we go, newidea.site. It is working with its SSL padlock, and this is our basic WordPress website. All right, the last step that we can do here now that everything is up and running is set up the firewall. So that is the stack install of the UFW firewall. I'm going to copy that one, and we'll paste that into our terminal and run that. Again, this takes a few seconds, and there we've got our firewall all set up. If we type in UFW status, we can see how it's all been set up for us already. So there we can see all the ports that are allowed and limited to help protect our server. So that's all done, and we're good to go. Okay, to access your new site, you just go to your URL/WP admin, and that will take you to your login screen where we can log in. Now, your username and password are going to be the same as those that we obtained during the install process. So just copy those out and put them in and go ahead and log in. Once you're in your WordPress dashboard, you can head over to Appearance and Themes and start setting up a WordPress site. I've skipped ahead here and I've already installed Kadence, and I've actually installed my favorite little starter template, this agency one down here, so we can run a few tests and see how well this actual server is performing. So this is what our actual starter site looks like. Nice, tidy, professional looking digital agency style website. And I ran this through Google PageSpeed Insights. Now, straight out of the box, Kadence is pretty good. Like, you've got an 85 in mobile and a desktop around 90. Now, with a few optimizations, you can actually really boost this. So after running some optimizations on here, I've got a 97 on mobile on the homepage. On the desktop, again, 97. Over on the services page, got a perfect 100 on there on mobile. So that was really awesome. On desktop, 99. I think this one did a little better because the services page doesn't have any images on there. So it's a very lightweight page. So that loaded really well. The contact page got a 98. That has a contact form on there. So that is really quite good. And the blog page, a 96. I did notice that the featured image does slow the contentful paint down to above 2.5 seconds. So if you change the blog layout to just make a text-based gradient with CSS, I was able to get that down to 1.1 and got a perfect 100. All right, and I will be making a optimization video for WordPress just to show the processes that I use to get this result. So make sure you hit subscribe so you can come back and see that video as soon as it comes out. Also, just say hi or thanks in the comments. That really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to leave a like if this was an interesting video. I definitely enjoyed making this one. Now, you can obviously follow along this tutorial with a free trial. Just hit that link in the description, head over to Linode or even use Vultr and do the same thing. You can build the server using the exact method that I used here. Now that the server is set up, I did mention earlier that WordOps has a web backend. So if you copy your IP address and port 22222 into the browser, you can actually log into the WordOps backend. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to copy that password. So head to that address. That's your IP address on port 22222, and we're going to pop that password in, and we are WordOps to log in. So here we are in the panel. There's not a whole lot you can actually do in here. It's basically just a monitoring station where you can see your CPU usage and your connections and RAM usage, those kind of things. You can actually get to the database editor because they've got phpMyAdmin and Admin in there if you want to work on your database. But for the most part, you won't ever really need to go in here. Maybe just check how everything is performing, but it's really just for your own interest. The other thing worth mentioning is maintenance and updates. They made WordOps maintenance very easy. It's just one command. Now, this is maintenance for your stack. So we just paste that into our terminal, WO maintenance, and run that. So this takes a few seconds. There wasn't much to update because it's obviously a very new package. Now, I should be clear here. This is just maintenance for new features and optimizations. This is not security updates. All the security updates are handled automatically by WordOps. So you don't have to worry about actually doing security updates. That's all done automatically. That's one of the big reasons I really like WordOps, because that takes one of the major pain points out of running your own server is the security updates. It handles that automatically. So that is fantastic. The other thing we can run is a WordOps update. So WordOps itself can be updated. We can just paste that in and run the WordOps update. It says WordOps is already installed. So as WordOps comes out with new features and things, they'll be added by running that WordOps update. Now, both of these commands, you don't need to run them very often, maybe once a month or so. It doesn't really matter. Like I said, the real important security updates are done automatically. The only other thing you might need to use in a year or so is updating PHP. So we're using PHP 7.4 at the moment. I think in the future when we get full PHP 8 compatibility, there'll probably become a PHP 8 upgrade. So it'll be a site update. You can do your website here and then --PHP, probably going to be PHP 80, but they don't have this command yet. But when WordOps supports PHP 8, you'll be able to do the update with something like this. So save that for the future, but these two, run those once in a while, but for the most part, this is all automatically secure. So no need to worry too much about that stuff. The other thing worth talking about is email. This is a small VPS. You don't want to be running email with your web server. You want to keep those separate. I've got 3 tutorials, so you can use Gmail for a business email. You can use Zoho, both free methods there. And for setting up SMTP on the actual WordPress for WordPress notifications, WooCommerce notifications, those kind of things, I've got this tutorial. So I'll pop all of those in the description so you can have your email set up on this method as well. Now that we've covered off all the aspects of building a site on WordOps, you can actually repeat this process. You can run this command again anytime you want. Just change the domain, add a new domain on Linode or Vultr or wherever, and you can make a new website.com or whatever, and just run that. You can add new websites to the server using that same command. So you can add as many as you want. There's no limit. The only limit is your own processor and memory. So with this small server, 6 or 7 websites should run just fine. I have heard of people running 12 or 15, but you've got to be careful that you don't run out of resources. So obviously just check the web panel, make sure everything's running smoothly. But if you run into any trouble, you may need to upgrade the server or use less websites on the server. But that basically wraps that up. One last thing I'll mention, some of you won't want to be building a new website. You want to transfer your website over to this service. So the easiest way to do that in this situation is going to be all-in-one migration or duplicator. I've done tutorials on both of those. You can take an existing WordPress site, move it over to a new server with either of these plugins. So I'll link to those in the description as well for my previous tutorials. I'll just remind you, all these commands, I'm going to put these over on my blog on ideaspot.com.au. So everything I used in this tutorial, you can reference it from my own website there. Just scroll down to my blog. I'll have a blog post put up there soon, so you can reference all the stuff I used in this tutorial exactly. All right, congratulations if you've made it this far. You've got your own server running WordPress. You're basically a full stack developer at this point in just a 20-minute tutorial. But if this was a little bit too complex, I've got a much easier Vultr setup using Plesk. Now that is just as fast, but limited to 3 domains. The other option is Cloudways, which doesn't have any limitations, but it's a little more expensive. But I'll put both those videos up here. Those are excellent options as well. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.